You may be seated. For thousands of years, when words have failed us, we've always sought comfort in the words of the Psalms. At this time, I'd like to invite Cantor Israel Singer, Cantor of Temple Emmanuel in Gloucester, who's here today also with Rabbi David Seth Kirshner, my colleague, both of them from Gloucester, from Temple Emmanuel, are Johnny and Nina's rabbi. Cantor Singer will lead us in the 23rd Psalm.
Mizmor David, Adonai Elohim lo echsa, binod yar bitzeni alemei menucho yenaleni nafshi yeshover yancheni maklei tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech begei tzal mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shiftecha umishantecha ema Yenachamoni Taro lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai Shanta B'Shemen Roshi Ach tov chesed ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך
The following poem was read at the service for the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth's mother. It's not a British poem, but I know how much Pauline appreciated her British background, so I share this with you.
You can shed tears that she is gone, or you can smile because she has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that she'll come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that she has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see her, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember her and only that she is gone, or you can cherish her memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you could do what she would have wanted, smile, open your eyes, love, and go on.
Ribono Shalom, Master of the universe, Creator of heaven, earth, man, and woman, be gracious to your children who now mourn. May the light of your presence dispel the gloom of absence so keenly felt on this sad day. Bless them with your compassion, empower them with your love, touch them with the fullness of your heart that they may be granted inner peace. El Shaddai, Almighty God of the living and the dead, send comfort to your children who now grieve. Overcome by the pain of loss, they need your help to focus on the triumph and on the joy in Pauline Mattana's life. Help them to meet grief with courage, to face sorrow undaunted. Help them to treasure what is now theirs because Pauline lived. Should despair threaten or faith falter, sustain us all, Adonai, for you are our refuge and our strength, our ever-present help in troubled times. And let us say, Amen. The thoughts of we who are gathered here today are filled with recollections of Pauline Mattana. We're bound together by a bond of common sorrow. Our tears join us on the sad occasion of her death. O Lord, as we are grateful to you for the bounties of life, even so do we accept the evening calm of death. It's not easy to understand death. We are pained by Pauline's passing. There's a gap that her death causes that nothing can fill. And so we are left to grapple with our feelings and treasure our memories of a life shared and love embraced. And by sharing these memories, by giving voice to these thoughts, we hope to pay tribute to the life of a mother, a sister, a good and loyal friend. So this morning, I'd first like to call on those who knew her the best to share their memories, their thoughts at this hour of parting. I begin by calling on her sons, Stuart, then David, then John.
On this sad, emotional, trying day, I reflect on my mom and her journey in life. A long road that began in 1927. Her passing is sad, but the richness of her journey in life is undeniable, and reflecting on it gives me some comfort. Her love for me was unswerving and unconditional, and I loved her very deeply. She's irreplaceable, but the memories I have of her are for keeps. Though her greatest love was for her husband, her sons, and her grandchildren, not far behind was her love for England and everything English. Tony Bennett left his heart in San Francisco, but my mom left hers in London. Though she lived in London for 29 years and New York for 61, she was unmistakably British to the end, and she wore it on her sleeve proudly, as we all know. One thing that seems especially odd to me is that Mom rarely spoke to me of her youth at great length until the last decade or so. But I'm glad she did. She really wanted me to know her story. And I feel I can do Mom some credit today by briefly telling it. After all, as so many of us realize, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Mom was the daughter of Polish immigrants to London. Her father, Abraham Schechter, a cantor in a London synagogue, counted Solomon Schechter, founder of conservative Judaism, as his great uncle. Judaism, therefore, was undeniably one of the pillars on which Mom's life was built, and the same can be said of her family's life. Evacuated as a child during World War II, Mom admitted to me that she understood little about the war at that time, for she was just 13 during the Battle of Britain. Still, she recalled how Churchill always reassured her and other British people of better times ahead with his speeches. In contrast, by the end of the war, Mom was 18. She understood what it had all meant and certainly appreciated the significance of the war's end. She spoke of VE Day as if it was yesterday, but it wasn't yesterday, it was in 1945. She spoke of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth as if it was yesterday, how she lined the streets, but it wasn't yesterday. That was 1953. The post years were a little bit strenuous, and many people don't realize that rationing raged on until 1954. But a year after that, my mom met and married my father, and in 1956, they were off to America. Mom's best work was, of course, yet to come, raising a family and being a loving mother and a skilled, effective manager of a sometimes challenging household. She was active in the community, especially as a member of this very synagogue, Temple Beth Shalom, serving as both an officer and a trustee of the temple during her membership of almost 50 years. Though a Londoner at heart, she came to appreciate New York, especially its richness in the cultural arts. She loved the opera, the ballet, the theater, and the symphony, and she and my father shared many wonderful times together enjoying these pursuits. My dad died in 2011, and Mom's toughest years were surely the ones since, but she carried on and kept on living, playing both golf and bridge into old age, and even driving a car until about age 87. I saw a lot of Mom in the years since Dad died, and now, sadly, she's gone. What can I say, Mom? Except thanks for being a loving mother and a shining presence in my life. You'll be dearly missed, Mom, but I'll keep on loving you and thinking of you. I am your legacy, and I'll try to do you credit for the remainder of my days. Farewell, Mom. Thanks for everything.
My mother was an energetic, dynamic woman. Throughout her life, her family and then Judaism were her top priorities. She grew up with two wonderful parents and sisters in the Cricklewood section of London. Her father was the Chazan of the Walm Lane Synagogue. Her mother, a courageous leader of the Jewish community, who actually traveled alone on a rescue mission to Poland in 1937. At a time when few British women went to college, my mother received a degree from the Institut Français of London. She spoke 5 languages fluently and enjoyed a lifelong involvement in the arts, including the ballet, classical music, and the opera. In the late 1950s, my parents immigrated to the United States. When years later people asked if she came through Ellis Island, my mom loved to somewhat jokingly retort, "No, I came on the QE2 first class." It was true, but probably shouldn't have mentioned it. While my mother came to love America, she always remained unmistakably British, as Stu indicated. She and my dad had grown up in the England of Winston Churchill and always felt a special London pride. Her close relationship with her sister Helen ensured that her connection to her homeland would last her entire life. Joining Temple Beth Shalom in 1969 had a huge impact on my mother's life. Among her fellow congregants, she found a sense of Jewish community and a love of the state of Israel that mirrored her own. In her time at Beth Shalom, she served on the Board of Trustees and chaired numerous committees. While protesting on behalf of Soviet Jewry in 1969, raising money for Israel's defense during the Yom Kippur War in 1973, and marching against terrorism in 2002, my mom and dad forged lifelong friendships with their fellow members. The 2002 march is especially memorable to me, as my mom took both my wife and my daughter with her to Washington. Throughout the years, my parents and their Beth Shalom friends rejoiced at each other's simchas, comforted each other in hard times, and celebrated Shabbat and the holidays together. This sanctuary was the setting for all three of her sons' bar mitzvahs and Johnny and Needham's wedding. To my mother, this synagogue was sacred ground in every respect. Another significant institution in my mother's life was Fresh Meadow, where she took up golf and made many close friends these past 43 years. But while she loved Fresh Meadow, it was always Beth Shalom that was her second home. In the mid-1970s, as my brothers and I grew older and more independent, my mother re-entered the workforce, becoming an account executive in the trade show business. She often told me in her classic Pauline way, "You know, David, I work hard and earn a lot of money." I was never quite sure what to think, and in all honesty, at times I was a little skeptical. Well, around 3 years ago, more than 25 years after she had retired, an interesting thing happened. While she and I were eating dinner in the diner at North Shore Towers, a big, come-on strong guy in his mid-60s, typical career salesman, came over to say hello. Unfortunately, my mom didn't seem to recognize him, but when he went back to his table, I overheard him say to his companion, "You see that little woman? She's no joke. She was the top salesman in my firm 8 years in a row." I will always remember how proud I felt hearing that. My mom was the unquestioned leader of our family, and where she led, we all followed. It is because of her that Judaism plays such an important role in the lives of all her children and grandchildren. Her tradition of treating Friday night dinner as untouchable is one we have all kept up and will continue. Sadly, my mom faced difficult final years. Her beloved Jeffrey was gone, and her memory and health were in decline. On behalf of our entire family, I'd like to thank the many friends who showed her so much kindness and loyalty, especially the Goldsteins. I also want to thank Kathy and Eva, who gave her such exceptional care, and without whom my mom would not have been able to remain in her own home. Eva genuinely has the patience of a saint. Kathy has been an incredibly important person to our family for over 25 years. She helped my mother take care of my dad in his last years and went the extra mile for my mom these last 6.5 years. She is truly one in a million. All the Mattanas worked hard to rally around my mom these past years. Johnny often made the trip from Jersey, Stu from New York, and Nina always gave us the benefit of her medical expertise. But right now, I have to offer my own personal thanks to my wife, Faye. After my father passed away, Faye began inviting my mom for Shabbat dinner every night. As my mom's condition deteriorated, Faye devoted a great deal of time to her and treated her with an extraordinary degree of kindness and patience. These past years, our phone rang frequently with emergency calls from North Shore Towers. Whether it was 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., Faye's response was always the same. She would look at me and say, "We, not you, we better get over there right away." When we arrived, Faye's patience, which far exceeded my own, was always invaluable. Both my mom and I were very fortunate to have had her there. With all my mother's experiences and achievements, in the final analysis, the hallmarks of her life were her devotion to her family and to the community at large. As time goes on, the enormous benefits we all reap from her devotion will remain her enduring legacy. But at this moment, all I can think of is how much I love and miss her.
Well, when I walked in this morning into the sanctuary, it was empty. It looked exactly the same as the first time we were here in 1969 as a family. And it seems only fitting that this is where we say goodbye. It's difficult to sum up 90 years in a few minutes, but I'm going to try to paint a picture and share some of my memories. My mother was a spitfire, a complex woman, but like many of us, she was burdened by life's challenges. And some of them actually brought out the best in her. In the mid-50s, my dad chose a job in New York, and it was off to the US of A. My mother came along, but she left a piece of her heart back in London. Mom was now separated from her sister Helen, her closest friend and confidant. They spoke on the phone at least once a week, usually more, and my parents would visit London several times a year for over 50 years. In '69, my parents moved into this community. My dad worked hard to provide while my mother raised 3 boys, mostly on her own. Temple Beth Shalom quickly became a home for us. And this was really the center of her life, spiritually and in many ways socially. From the family tree of Solomon Schechter, she was passionate to serve the Jewish conservative movement. She took pride in countless leadership roles in this extremely vibrant congregation. At home, she created the most traditional Jewish household to go along with a comprehensive religious education for my brothers and myself. She instilled in us a rock-solid Jewish Zionist identity, and this will be the indelible memory I have of my mother. Mom loved the Jewish holidays, while my dad crossed off the days on the calendar until the next exciting vacation. Mom, she looked forward to the next of the pilgrimage holidays on the Jewish calendar. It was a chance to cook, carry on lifetime family traditions, and spend quality time with her family. Nothing pleased her more. The Jewish holidays is what she lived for. She was quite a businesswoman, built a nice little nest egg. But she had really no interest in material possessions, so she really never spent a penny of it. We were very proud of Mom's successful career as a trade show executive. But that was not her greatest achievement. No, that would be convincing her friends George and Dorothy to have their granddaughter Nina go out with yours truly. That's achievement. She enjoyed cooking, playing bridge and golf, and most of all, traveling the world with my dad. They loved history, they loved seeing the world. She spoke the Queen's English and had a tremendous sense of British pride. Having lived through World War II, she lived life with a perspective. Mom was never quite whole after the passing of my dad 6 years ago. The last few years have been challenging, and particularly the past few weeks. I prefer to remember the good times, the good stuff. You're with Dad again, as you wished. I love you, Mom. Rest in peace.
I'd like to call on her granddaughter, Maxine, to share a few thoughts.
So many of the things I love in my life are thanks to my grandmother, Pauline Mattana. Pauline took pride in her intelligence and her appreciation of many different types of art. I was incredibly lucky that she was more than happy to share this with me, making a tradition of taking me to Broadway shows throughout my childhood, leading to a lifelong love of theater. Even more importantly, Pauline was a wonderful person to enjoy art with. I remember us going to see A Chorus Line and having a deep discussion afterwards of how we expected the dancing to be impressive but were unexpectedly moved by the story. And Pauline's tastes were often eclectic. She was a big fan of the movie Juno, for example, although she thought Ellen Page could do better than Michael Cera, which I agreed with. But it wasn't just art Pauline loved. Pauline loved language and took pride in her French and her ability to remember Shakespeare's speeches. She loved French food and took me some of the best restaurants in New York. She let me know how frequently she appreciated the fact that I, as a child, had unusual interests like Gilbert and Sullivan, and she, along with her husband, my grandfather Jeffrey, gave me full access to their collection of recordings of various productions long before YouTube. And she was more than happy to enjoy all these things alongside me. Pauline was tough and proud of her work in trade shows in Chicago. She was ambitious, and she demonstrated the importance of striving to do new things. Pauline was not interested in being silent, but in finding new experiences and taking them fully. She was active in her temple and passionate about Judaism, and she also had many interesting ideas and opinions on things like women's rights and current and past historical events. I remember her declaring that Britain had voting rights for women many years before America. Pauline made an effort to stay up to date with technology. She was determined, and she did not give up finding new ways to spend and incredible ways to spend her time. Pauline's determination and generosity will inspire me for the rest of my life. However, beyond her force and personality and her willingness to take on the world, and more than any of the things she introduced me to, Pauline let me know that she was proud of me no matter what I was doing and that I was important to her, which is why, among many reasons, she was very important to me.
I'd like to now call on Barbara Goldstein, good friend, to share a letter. You hear some? Oh, there, come on up. As was mentioned, Barbara and Howard were very good to Pauline and enabled her to get out and participate in things long beyond when she was able to. And they were one of many good friends here at Temple Beth Shalom who looked in on her and looked after her during these last number of years.
So I want to read a letter from Mimi Cordera, very close friend of Pauline's, who was not able to be here today, but wrote these few words and asked me to please deliver them for her. She entitled her little letter, A Beautiful Friendship. Although Pauline and I grew up thousands of miles apart, Pauline in London, England, and I in Borough Park, Brooklyn, our Jewish homes were virtually very similar, Orthodox, Zionist, and of course, thoroughly immersed in Jewish ritual and holiday observance. Having so much in common, we soon became fast friends. Over the many years of our friendship, we went on many trips together and spent lots of happy times, both in Roslyn and Florida, where we each had homes. However, long before we had our own Florida home, Pauline, in her generosity, offered us to stay in her Florida apartment. On another personal note, when our daughter Beth became engaged, Pauline immediately announced that she would host a luncheon at the Fresh Meadows Country Club in honor of this event in our lives. Pauline spent much of her boundless energy at Temple Beth Shalom in addition to raising 3 sons and working full-time. Being so knowledgeable as the daughter of a renowned cantor, Pauline added so much to the vibrancy of temple life that she was made an honorary member of the board. Bernie and I will always treasure the fond memories of our long and happy friendship with Pauline and Jeffrey over many, many years. And kind of spontaneously, permit me a moment to reflect on a memory or two of my own Pauline. So everyone here, first of all, I want to say to Jonathan and Stuart and David how beautifully they evoked Pauline in her essence. And so everyone knows, of course, how being British was so integral a part of her identity. Now, Pauline belonged to a local chapter of Daughters of the British Empire. And I used to joke with her, I said, Pauline, you're a daughter of the British Empire the way I'm a daughter of the American Revolution. But nevertheless, she was very, very proud of this part of her identity. And, even after, as I think Stuart mentioned, even after 60 years, Pauline spoke of going home every time she went to visit her family in England. And several years ago, many years ago, actually, my husband Howard and I and other members of this congregation actually had the opportunity to go home with Pauline on the occasion of David and Faye's marriage. It was in Liverpool. How many years ago? Was it 1985? Long time ago, right? But a whole contingent of American friends went to London, to Liverpool for David and Faye's wedding. And afterwards, we spent several days in London. And one of my most beautiful memories of that trip really was Pauline took me on a field trip into her life. She took me back to Cricklewood and walked the streets of the neighborhood where she had grown up. She took me back to the very house where she had grown up and actually knocked on the door, and we went in, and she was astonished to see that there was even still some furniture left over from her parents' house. And most importantly, she took me to the beautiful synagogue in Cricklewood where her father had been a chazan. And so I saw, the neighborhood was completely changed. It was really an Indian enclave by this time. There was very little really that remained of the Cricklewood. But I saw a little girl growing up in the 30s and the 40s, a little British girl, the child of Polish immigrants in this new miraculous country. And underneath it all, I saw she was, I think, perhaps the most authentic part of her identity, her core sense of self. She was Cantor Schechter's, Chazan Schechter's daughter. And that's the part that she shared with me, and I think that that never left her. And as I said, she lived, as has been noted here, she lived a very cosmopolitan life. World traveler, patron of the arts, career woman, synagogue activist, community involvement, club lady, bridge player, all this stuff. But at her very core, perhaps the most authentic self was this Chazan and Mrs. Schechter's daughter. Thank you very much.
We say, Devarim hayotzim min halev nichnasim el halev, that words that come from the heart enter into the heart. And thank you for helping to paint for all of us that picture of the Pauline that we knew and loved. Stuart, you mentioned in your image one that resonated with me, and this idea of her life as being a journey. And there's a poem that I love that captures that same sentiment. It's written by a rabbi that states, birth is a beginning, death is a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity, from youth to age, from innocence to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination, and life is a journey. For those of us who knew and loved Pauline, it was truly a journey, and her life was a journey that was lived her way on her terms. For many of us, it was very difficult to watch this last part of that journey. As she began to forget, and as she became more and more confused, how different this was from the formidable and passionate woman that we had known for so many years. So today we choose to remember that woman, the Pauline Mattana, and you've heard so much has been made of her pride in England. You know, England was not where Pauline was from. It was who she was. I used to joke, was I the only one that sort of felt that her accent became more British the longer she lived here? Somehow for Pauline, her proper British accent and bearing was a way for her to subtly and not so subtly remind you that tradition and correctness were on her side in any discussion or debate. And it was not just England she was loyal to, but the old England, the love of Queen and country England. You heard about the fact that she spoke many languages. In addition to her beloved English, which we Americans never got right, she spoke French and Spanish and German and Hebrew, Yiddish. She was raised in a very Zionistic family. Maybe it had something to do with being raised in London during the Blitz and knowing the fragility of her existence, that England was all that stood between her family and the concentration camps. But whatever the source, she continued this family tradition by being a passionate Zionist all her years here at Temple Beth Shalom. She was one of the chairs of our 25th anniversary. In fact, I don't think there was ever I was going to say a gala, but if I'm talking about a gala, right? There was ever a gala that was held here at Temple Beth Shalom that Pauline wasn't involved in. You heard about the fact that she came to America when Jeffrey, and again, I say Jeffrey, in my head I hear Joffrey. She came to America when Jeffrey's firm asked him, we're looking for someone to work in their American office. And Pauline had a difficult time warming up to American ways. And really it was only when she moved here to Roslyn in 1969 that she found a home in this country. And so began a love affair. Pauline with Beth Shalom and Beth Shalom with Pauline. Jeffrey was happiest when he was at the country club. But there was no doubt that Pauline was happiest when she was here in this sanctuary, in this shul. She was expert on all things cantorial. You heard that her father was a chazan, and that gave her a pedigree that enabled no cantor ever came to this shul during the time that she was here without passing muster through Pauline. And no piece that the cantor ever did once he got here would ever stay in the repertoire until it passed muster. For all the years, we have our cantors concert every year, and she was the chairperson of practically every one till recently. This was her not only self-appointed, but appointed role in this congregation. It was here on this bima that all three of you celebrated your bar mitzvah. Here that Johnny, you and Nina were married. It was here on this bima I remember celebrating Jeffrey and Pauline's 55th wedding anniversary shortly before Jeffrey's death. And so I think it's appropriate that this sanctuary is her final stop on her earthly journey. There's no doubt that, as has been mentioned, that Judaism was just at the core of her identity. As the children remember it, um, dates were marked not by the month of the calendar, but not by fall or winter or spring, but something happened just after Passover or before the high holidays or around Hanukkah. Friday night meant gathering at her family Shabbat table. Pauline was the rock around which this family revolved. And it's nice that for many of us in the community, that their memory of this last Yom Kippur, where literally Pauline sat here for the entire day, even though it was probably beyond her ability to do so, but she was here through that whole day, and that's a wonderful memory for us. I know that this is such a difficult time for you, her family. That Pauline was the one that you went to for support and encouragement and love. She was always there for you, no matter what. And now she's gone, and you feel an enormous hole in your lives. But we insist that death ends life, but it does not end a relationship, and that you are still bound to your mother by 1,000 bonds of love that death cannot destroy. When you need her love will endure. When you need her strength, you just need to open yourself to the memories and the presence that was such an important part of your lives. And I believe that she will not fail you now, as she has never failed you up until now. Yes, when one surveys all the chapters of her life, it's possible to conclude that her life was indeed a journey well made by a loving and generous woman who gave love and received love, and the world is a better place for her having been here. Yes, birth is a beginning and death is a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity, from youth to age, from innocence to knowing. Her life ends, but her message continues. Her example survives. Her influence endures eternally. O God, let us bring thy children out of the darkness and the shadow of death. We thank thee for the life of Pauline Mattana, in whose friendship we were blessed, by whose understanding we were guided, and in whose tenderness we were healed. May the sureness of her nearness to us banish loneliness from our hearts, and the sureness of her nearness to thee, O God, quiet our anxious spirit. Be with those who most poignantly and most painfully feel the pangs of this hour, with Stuart and David and Faye and Johnny and Nina, with her sister Helen in England, with her grandchildren Joshua, Maxine, Zoe, and Phoebe, with all the family and friends. Comfort and strengthen their hearts, guide and direct their lives. Help them to know that deeper than the pains, the frustration, and even the mystery of death are your everlasting arms of love and mercy. Grant them steadfastness of purpose, faith in thee, and courage to face life. Give them the wisdom to say with understanding the ancient words of submission and resignation, perhaps the wisest words that could be said at an hour such as this. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach yehi shem Adonai mevorach. Lord, you have given, and now you have called unto yourself. We praise thee, O God, for the courage to make our broken hearts an altar before which we may acknowledge thy sovereignty and love. May thy name be praised now and forevermore. And let us say, Amen. It's appropriate at Pauline's funeral that we give the last word to the cantor. So would you please rise for the memorial prayer?
El Maleh Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Ametzei Menucha Nechona Achad Kanefei Ashchina במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים שמות. בתיה בת אברהם, שהלכה לעולמה. בעבור שאנו מתפללים ביד הזכרת נשמתה בגן עדן, בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה. לכן בעל הרחמים הסתירך בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח ושלום על משכבה. ונאמר
O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, the soul of Batya Bat Avraham, the soul of Pauline Mattana, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and the righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she now rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Interment will be immediately following in the Beth Shalom section of the new Montefiore Cemetery, following which the family will be observing Shiva as follows. Following burial through 9 p.m. tonight, they will be in Pauline's apartment in North Shore Towers, building number 2, apartment 12V. And then on Wednesday and Sunday, from 1 to 9, Shiva will be observed at Faye and David's, 52 Nassau Drive in Great Neck. And then on Thursday, in between, from 2 to 9, the Shiva will be observed at Johnny and Nina's, 22 Duane Lane, in Demarest, New Jersey. Demarest, all right. What do I know from New Jersey?